year, and we're very happy to have repeat speakers. I'm not sure, well, probably everybody in this room is familiar with the global outbreak worm that caught mostly everybody unprepared, and our friend Amit found a vaccine specifically for this malware, and I hope that after he finished talking about his talk, he will have a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about it.
Are you talking about the kill switch for the hashtag Pitya ransomware?
No, I'm talking about the vaccination for the Pitya ransomware.
Not a kill switch.
Oh.
Not a kill switch.
Okay, I'm happy we got that.
Doesn't matter. It stops it. All right, where's
Vaccination.
Okay, that's my cat. Okay, I'm good, thank you. Awesome. Okay. Mime. Okay, awesome. Just checking out that the demo gods are with me. It'll take a sec, and yet they are. Awesome. Okay. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I want to take a picture, just a sec. Wait, I have to take a selfie because I'm a millennial from the US now, so. Okay, awesome. Okay, yeah, so I'm gonna talk to you about some really shitty exploits. Me and my friend Yoav, get up, stand up. So everything I'm gonna show you was the work of both of us, so please, also it's him, it's not just me. So I'm gonna, oh, and I swear a lot, and after last night I had like 3 hours of sleep, so I'm gonna swear a lot. I'm gonna show you a bunch of stuff on this piece of shit, and yeah, let's go. Okay, so who am I? So that's me, I work for Cybereason, I do security research. Last night there was that not Petya thing, so I did that. Last year I was here, and I shamed the assholes behind OSX Spirit. I write some tools on the Cybereason GitHub, and I tweet. That's it. No, not more. That's enough. I'm originally from here, and that's Tel Aviv. And last year, I moved to Boston, Massachusetts. Amazing. It's the same slide from last year. Works every time. Okay, so awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick device overview on this piece of shit. We're going to map the attack surface of this piece of shit, followed by vulnerability research on this piece of shit, successful exploitation, and some demos. Okay, so let's start with the story. So last year, no, not last year, never mind. It was a random Saturday. I was chilling at Yoav's place, and we actually took that picture then because we were cracking jokes on like really bad hacker stock photo. And we were bored, and we were looking for something to hack. And he had this camera behind his desk, actually this desk, and we picked it up and said, oh my god, that looks amazingly shitty. Let's have a go at this one. So what are we talking about, actually? So this is a generic, and I can't stress the word generic enough, cloud IP security camera. So we all need to remember the word cloud. And whenever something looks like really super cheap like this, like no branding, all like the shittiest plastic, like this thing is a dumpster fire. So, you know, we have to do something about it. So I'm gonna, wait. Okay. I'm gonna start with a quick device overview. That's where Keynote always, okay, awesome. So what is this device exactly other than being a security camera, an IP security camera? So it's basically, it runs on a generic ARM system on a chip. That's the architecture. It's running its own brute version of Linux with BusyBox. Now, if you don't know what BusyBox is, it's basically just an environment that, it's basically one multi-call binary that gives you all the basic POSIX tools you need to run embedded Linux. So the fuck just happened? So if we go to /bin and run ls-a or something like that, we can see that all of those executables are actually symlinks to /bin/busybox. So if busybox sees that you executed vconfig, so it sees, okay, you called me through vconfig, so I will give you vconfig. So busybox is basically one big statically linked binary with everything you need to run on embedded Linux. Now, let's talk about that camera for a sec. Because other than running a really old version of Linux, and we'll talk about that in a second, it also runs a bunch of really outdated code that was hacked together just so it would work. And just like most of the shitty Internet of Things, embedded devices, cyber stuff, it follows the rules that if the developer who wrote the code managed to compile the code, it's fine. Like, security, fuck that. And no. If something just compiles, it's not okay. And we're going to see that in a few moments. So remember the cloud thing? So I'm not going to talk about that at all because that's a talk on its own. But I just want you to remember this. This camera has a protocol that's called PPPP. I'm going to guess that's point-to-point-to-point protocol, the third point being the Chinese. And that's true. And every camera, sorry about that, every camera has a QR code on its backside. I hope it won't reboot. Of course it rebooted. So there's a QR code right here. Oh shit. I hope it's gonna, okay, I'm gonna leave you alone now. So there's a QR code, and you use the QR code with their like horrible Android or iOS app. You scan the barcode, and what's happening is that instead of going to your router and setting a bunch of like NAT redirections and stuff, the good people at the unknown brand company will open a PPPPPPP tunnel into your house. The only thing that you need is that QR code. You can imagine how bad this is. So everything I'm going to show you, you can do with the protocol. We did a small work on the protocol. I contacted someone. It's just bad. Let's just move on. And this thing is being made by a company that's called VStarCam. And they also make it as a white label. So this one actually has the VStarCam logo on it. But I bought about 40 of those. I'll show you from different vendors. Some of them have no branding at all. Some of them have other brands on them. But they're all made using the software that's made by VStarCam. And one thing about VStarCam is that on their website, yeah. So as I said, horrible apps. I'm going really fast because there's a lot to cover in little time. And the web server that it's running is a web server that's called the Go-Ahead web server. Now, do we have any like embedded reverse engineers in the audience other than you who know how shitty Go-Ahead web server is? Other than you? Okay, I'm going to show you. Glad you came. Okay. And other than running Go-Ahead server, it has a web interface that is just a clusterfuck of elementary school level code that was mashed together and somehow managed to compile. So, also, it's really popular. I managed to craft a showdown query that gave me 800,000 devices. That's 800,000 root shells everywhere. And it's so popular because it's being sold on Amazon and eBay and other websites for really cheap. A camera like this is, if you pay more than $30, you're getting screwed. So that's like a $30 root shell. And yeah, and as you can see, it scales weird. I bought a lot of those from different vendors. Like I bought all of those. They're all running the same code, and they're all from different vendors and different stores and different whatnot. So let's talk about the web server, because that's always the most interesting thing when you're doing security research on such embedded devices. So as I said, this camera is running the Go-Ahead web server, which is a product by a company called EmbedThis, which is an awesome name. And it's just a small web server, single binary, statically linked features web server. Nice. So among the components that they show on their website that they have all of this, and they also have something that's called a CGI handler. And in case you don't know what a CGI handler is, CGI stands for Common Gateway Interface. And that means that there is code that's being executed on the server side with input that's being received on the client side. Now, this is not something really smart. This could be a shell script, a binary program, something that gets input. And this was really popular in the 90s, but the 90s are over, and today, this is a terrible fucking idea. So the 90s are over. Also, parts of that web server are open source, but if the user, if whoever uses this web server wants to add things into the server using a CGI handler, those things will be compiled into the web server executable file. So all of those extra features will be actually built in and compiled into the binary executable. So when you reverse engineer the binary of the web server, you'll find all of that crap in there. Back to our story. So we were looking for remote code execution. It was just, let's get a root shell on this from the internet. Let's go and show it and fun a bunch of those things and get a root shell. That was our purpose. So we were looking for remote code execution. But we had one problem. We did not have the firmware. Now, usually, again, when you're doing security research on such devices, you want to get the firmware, because what you do is just you load the firmware into IDA Pro and start looking for shitty mistakes. And there are always shitty mistakes in such devices. But in our case, this wasn't made by a popular, well-reputable brand. As I said, this is a piece of shit. So you can't just go to pieceofshit.com and see if they have an FTP site with all of their GPL stuff. So this was a challenge. And you know what that means. So that's Yoav's camera. After a nice treatment that he gave her. Did you really use a hammer? I remember like banging.
I use only my hands as my specialty.
That's too easy. Okay, so we took it apart, and in case you don't know, most of those embedded devices has something that's called a UART port. Now, a UART port, aka a serial port, is the equivalent of just plugging a monitor and a keyboard directly to the console. So all we had to do is to find where on the board are those UART headers, plug in a serial interface to them, understand what the terminal speed is, and basically you get like a keyboard and a screen, directly on the console. So we did that using a trusty bus pirate. We plugged in some wires, soldered some wires, turned the thing on, and what do you know? The thing started booting, and we got a root shell. Now, that root shell, you understand, the thing is like taken apart and there's wires soldered into that. That's not remote code execution, that's fucking around with a hammer. So what do we do now? So we wanted to get the files, we wanted to get the firmware. So what we actually did is we just transferred all of the MTD blocks in /dev/mtd, /dev/mtd block 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using nothing but DD and netcat, because the folks who made the image and compiled the BusyBox included netcat on this thing. And we had DD and we had netcat, so it means that we have a party. So it was as easy as DD if equals blah, 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 pipe netcat, blah, blah, blah on our computer. So now we have the firmware, and that's awesome. So what we did is we just used binwalk. And if you don't know binwalk, that's an amazing set of Python tools that were written by Craig Hefner, especially and solely for that purpose. And now we literally unpacked it, and as you can see, this is the firmware, these are the files. We have everything. So here's what we know now. This thing that was purchased recently runs a kernel from 2008. I've had several devices that ran kernels from 2005. And this is being sold today. Wait, this is not all. We know that it's running Go-Ahead Web Server, and we also know that parts of Go-Ahead Web Server are open source. So that means that we don't have to fuck around with IDA Pro unless it's really necessary. And we also, again, we saw a lot of poorly written looking code along with a lot of unupdated software and libraries. So, remember a few years ago, the really, really vulnerable UPnP stack that had like hundreds and thousands of shells a few years ago? So yeah, of course, they're there. And this thing is brand new. There is also a file called system.ini in the web root directory that contains the password in clear text. We cannot ask for that file because it's password protected. Huh? But something has to be vulnerable here. Okay, 15 minutes. Let's do this. So we were looking for the attack vector. So we had to pause and wait. We had to pause and think for a second. So okay. We want to see where we can interact with user-controlled strings. So, as we all know, when users communicate with software, they are sending input. And that input is being processed by the code that's running on this thing. And if we can manipulate the software using our input, then we're all hackers. And if at some point someone made a mistake within the code that handles that input, we're good hackers. So let's start by mapping our attack vectors. So where is their user-controlled input? And again, as soon as you connect, you have to know the password. You have very little space to interact with the camera. So we have to know where is their user-controlled input, and is that code that handles that user-controlled input, is it vulnerable? Is there a mistake there? And if it is vulnerable, how can we exploit it? So let's try by logging into the admin panel. So this is the IP address of the camera. The web server is running on port 81 for some reason. And the first thing that happens when you log in, you get an authentication box. What is your username and password? Of course, we don't know that because we want remote code execution. So we started by analyzing the code that's in the login process. But we didn't really find anything exploitable there. Actually, when I looked at it a while after, I found a buffer overflow in there. So you can just send like a really long username, and it'll crash. But buffer overflows and shellcoding is hard, and debugging is hard, especially on that. And I don't want to do debugging because it's hard, and I'm lazy. So the code there, the code that handles the authentication does a really simple thing. It takes the input and just compares it to what's in that file, system.ini, that I've mentioned earlier. Yeah, and I just said that. So let's think about that for a moment. What is the first point of contact of a user-controlled string with the web server? And that, my friends, is the web request itself. Shit is about to get stupid. So, and that's that brilliant guy right here. So when you request a web page, you send something that's called an HTTP request. Now, this is a really stupid, oversimplified version of an HTTP request. But you go and oh my God, that screen is huge. You send a GET request. You say, I want to get this file with this protocol. That's simple. Now, note that you always start the path with that slash, with that web root. Okay? Now, if everything's okay, if the permissions check out, if that page exists, if everything is okay, the server will send back an HTTP response called 200 OK. Means, okay, here's your shit. So let's go and look at that code for a second. So we went to the code because, as I said, parts of Go-Ahead Web Server are open source. And this version was so fucking ancient that we had to look really hard to find that in GitHub. Because that thing runs Go-Ahead Web Server from 10 years ago. A little bit more than 10, actually. We'll talk about that, too. So this is the code. This is super simple. This gets the request, figures it out, where's what, what's what. Simple. And then we saw this. And this is amazing. So there is something that's called a bad HTTP request. Meaning, if you send a request that doesn't conform with the HTTP standards, the web server is going to say, what the fuck do you want? Bad HTTP request, error code 400, right here. Now, we looked at the code and we were shocked because the only thing you have to do to get a bad request error from the server is if you don't send a GET request, a POST request, or a HEAD request. Doesn't matter what's inside the request. Because everything you'll put in the request, even if it doesn't make any fucking sense, the server will just take it and will process it. If you won't send a GET, a POST, or a HEAD, you'll get a bad HTTP request. And that, my friend, is pure stupidity. So, quick recap. An HTTP request is considered legit only if there is a slash in the beginning of it. Okay? In our case, that's URL position 7 in that code. And there is no real exception handling of web requests. Sorry. You will only get an HTTP 400 error if your request is not a POST, a GET, or a HEAD. So, as I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'll live demo it. Screw that. Okay. Zoom. Okay. Oh, I didn't check if it's still working. Yes. Okay. So I'll do a get to /system ini, and it'll tell me unauthorized, right? The file with the password is protected by a password. I can't ask for it. But remember, it takes everything. So I'm just going to do get system ini, no slash. Okay? Here's the file. You ain't seen shit. So here's the username, admin, and this is the password. ZAQXSWCDE, that thing. Now, I really tried to impress you with a complicated password. Thing is, someone made a mistake, and I was shocked when I reverse engineered because someone used an or instead of an and, so a password can only be all lowercase, all uppercase, or all numbers. Because every time I tried to set a complicated password, I got an error. Fuck me, right? Okay. Yeah. Play. Let's continue. 3 hours of sleep, 8 minutes to go. Make it count. Okay, so I just showed you that. Just showed you that. Just showed you that. Okay. Now I know you'll say, okay, this is just the admin panel. So okay, so you can see the picture on the camera, you can move it around, whatever. Now what? This is not remote code execution. And you are right. So I started rummaging inside and throughout the administration panel, which you see it's beautifully engineered, state-of-the-art web design. And I did what, that's like, I'm a one-trick pony, I'm not that good. So what I always do is I just type semicolon reboot in everything. And this page is called like mail settings page. So if the camera detects some kind of a motion, it'll send you an email. So you need to put like the SMTP server, your username, your password, and your recipients. Now I had this idea that they're just calling some external program using that CGI handler from before and just passing arguments and sprintfing arguments into that and just calling system on it. So I wrote semicolon reboot. I clicked the submit button. Oh, god damn it. And the thing rebooted. And does this mean what I think it means? Someone is calling system with user input. Fucking amazing. So in case you don't know what system is, it's a C call, and it basically just executes a command like a shell command. And that's how you do it. It's super simple. So you do like system, ls, and ls will be executed by your code. Now, I can't stress that enough. Seriously. Passing user-controlled strings to system is a bad fucking idea. Don't. Okay? Don't. Now, This is command injections. This is like super simple and stupid. As I said, I am not good. I'm lazy. I'm lucky. I'm not good. Whenever people are writing like shitty code like this, they're not sanitizing the text, so the input, sorry. So sanitizing the input is super, super important because characters like the semicolon and the pipe and pipe and end and backticks can be used to inject arbitrary commands, and that's bad. So just to verify, I went to IDAPRO and I looked at that code and holy shit, I was right. Because as you can see, they're just echoing a bunch of stupid input into mailx, which is what sends the email, and then they're just calling system on it. So remote code execution. So wow, I made it on time, I'm shocked. So what I'm gonna show you now is actually the exploit code that I wrote. So it's 61 lines of Python, including prints. It's really, really simple. So imagine that this camera is on the internet, right? And it's publicly accessible because people want to look at their homes from, when they're not at home. So can you guys see it? Is it okay? Okay, so where am I? Okay, so PyCharm projects, Campone. Okay, so, god damn it. Campone, the address of the camera, port 81, enter. So what are we doing? We're using the first info leak to get the password, what I showed you before. So I'm getting the password, and I'm authenticating with the password to that mail sending page, and I'm injecting, and this is a trick that I always do, and I'm injecting a very simple command into it. And this thing takes like 15, 20 seconds until it finishes. So I'm going to go back to the slides and I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So instead of semicolon reboot, I'm just using semicolon telnet D because they were kind enough to also build a telnet server inside BusyBox. So I'm just using telnet D, I'm just using a port. My favorite is 4444. And this is like, again, I'm a one-trick pony. I'm like sharing all of my secrets here. I'm using that flag, -L. So there are no spaces here. That's on purpose. -L, so that's the thing. When you use telnet D and you don't use that argument, so telnet D runs the default program when a connection is initiated. The default program is login. Login will ask for your username and password, the one that's in /etc/passwd. Now, I have no idea what the password is there because I have nothing to do with the image on this thing, right? But -L will basically say, okay, which process do you want to run after a connection is initiated? I'm like, binsh, of course. So we're back here. Now, as we can see, we have a root shell on port 4444 because the exploit finished running. Believe me, there wasn't a shell there before. No hidden doors or whatever. Now, the cool thing about this is that the web server is being run by the user root. That's the only user on this camera. They don't have another user. And as you all know, running stuff as root, especially things that interact with the fucking internet, is also a bad idea. So that means if I injected a command into the web server, it will be executed as root. So that means that if I'm now telnetting this IP address on port 4444, god damn it, telnet, I will get a root shell. Nah, they suck. Okay. So some interesting facts. That slash vulnerability that we were really, really excited about was actually discovered by this guy, Luigi Oriyama. He's from Italy, back in January of 2004 on a printer. And he himself pushed the patch, the update, whatever, to go-ahead's Git. So what we thought was a 0-day was in fact 4,745-day, sort of. We did, however, still get CVEs for that. So the first one is the slash vulnerability on this large array of devices. The second one is the command injection. Now, here's another interesting part. About 3 months after we published all of that, and like there was an insane buzz around it, a security researcher called Pierre Kim discovered almost the same vulnerabilities and also received CVEs from them. And if you've heard about the Purser Eye botnet, that's Yoav's and that's our fault and this guy's fault. So, hi, my name is Amit, I'm 30 and I made a botnet because I'm arrogant. So, our exploits were used to start this botnet. It's not us, it's our exploits. And I know some of you are skeptics and you say, hey, wait, that's bullshit because, holy shit, 50 seconds. That's bullshit because you can't expose a telnet port to the internet because that's a bind shell, it's not a reverse shell. So first of all, I can do a reverse shell, I just lost the file. But this camera also has a UPnP client to open the ports for itself. So if you don't know what UPnP is a protocol that tells your router, hey, I need this port open, and please open it and forward it to this device. Also, an amazing idea. And this device has a UPnP client on it. So we can just, using the same command injection, we can call UPnP static -d, port number, TCP, and bam, the router now forwards ports back to us. This is the output of UPnP static on the camera. And 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.